Hello and welcome to episode 34 of the world's first Paul Weller fan podcast. I'm Dan Jennings, and 10 years ago I gave up my live stream and career as a radio presenter with one big regret: never getting to interview my hero, the legendary British musician Paul Weller. This podcast exists purely to solve that issue. Welcome to Desperately Seeking Paul. And in this episode I chat with the fabulous Polly Birkbeck, PR guru, and the lady who looks after the main man, Mr. Paul Weller. After a memorable time at Food Records in the early 90s, home to the likes of Jesus Jones, Blur, and Diesel Park West, she moved to music PR in the heady days of BritPop, before going on to represent many artists, including Paul Weller, at V2 in the noughties. And she's worked with Paul ever since, if you can call it work. You can find her on Twitter at Polly Birkbeck, so say hello. And let's get into it. Polly, thanks for joining me.
Hello. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. You're right.
Hello.
Now, you were in Black Barn yesterday, so let's get straight to the chase. Before I ask you about how you discovered the music of Paul Weller, before I discovered whether it was the Jam, the Style Council, Weller solo, how was yesterday and how were the crew at Black Barn?
It was good. It went really well. We did an interview for one of the newspapers with Paul, and it all went very well. But I'm not going to tell you what it is because I'm not allowed to give it away yet. But yeah, there was a few people down there, Charles and Bill, and that was about it, really.
Did this little thing come up? Did the podcast come up at all, you know?
Yes, I was chatting to Bill about it, and Bill was, speaking very well of it, actually.
Oh, hello, Bill. This is Bill Wheeler, who's Paul's tour manager, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. And I won't ask you if the main man has heard about it yet, because you'll only crush me, I imagine.
He probably has, because I know they were sort of teasing Charles Rees, the engineer, because they said, "Oh, you haven't been asked. We've been asked. You haven't been." But
I'm sure I've asked Charles. I desperately want Charles. I'm going to drop him a line straight after this.
Lovely. You should get
and what's Black Barn like to be at as a place? And you obviously work with a lot of music artists and has done over the years. But what's it like?
Because it's really quite near where I live. So I can
handy.
just down in 20 minutes. So it's quite near where I live. It's a really nice place, actually. It's a really good place to do interviews. It's very relaxed and everyone's very kind of quite chilled out, and it's just great. There's lots of fun sort of stuff and memorabilia all over the walls and things like that. No, it's a really nice place.
Now, I'm going to get to the crux of it. When was it that you first started working with Mr. Weller? When did you first become his PR person?
Okay, when he signed to V2,
yeah,
I was the head of press at V2 Records, so I kind of automatically got to work with Paul Weller. So it was Studio 150 was the first thing I worked on. And I remember thinking, oh my God, I'm going to be doing Paul Weller, proper legend and everything. And I've stayed with him since. V2's long gone now, but I've stayed working for Paul since then. So it's been about nearly 20 years now.
Wow, amazing.
Yeah.
And that was a huge album, wasn't it? So that was Paul deciding to do a covers album, but it sold really well. It did really good business, that, didn't it?
I think it did. I can't remember that far. I mean, I've got a disc, a sort of a gold disc here. So it says in excess of 100,000 copies of it. So is that quite
good? That's not bad, is it? I'm sure Paul would be pretty happy with that these days. That's not bad, is it? And that was so Studio 150 as is now, and then the the Catch Flame live LP was the Alexandra Palace one was V2. But a lot of people have talked about this kind of next iteration of Weller, and I was talking to somebody earlier on where we were almost likening it to Doctor Who regenerating in a way, and 22 Dreams seemed like a point that a lot of people are talked about of Paul's regeneration.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, he's had a string of albums that have just gone down so well. It's amazing. It's really good that everyone's still really positive about all his new stuff as well.
It's remarkable, really, isn't it? Because you talk about when you were head of press, so you started V2 in 2000, right?
I started at V2, I think in 2000. I think Paul got signed to V2 in, I don't know, 2001, 2002. So
we're talking nearly 20 years. Well, yeah, we are talking 20 years ago. And before that, 20 odd years before that with the Jam and the Style Council. So when was it you first heard the music of Paul Weller, and what did it mean? I know he's kind of the boss in a way. So did you, I'm not going to say if you liked it or not, but can you remember?
Of course, I love the Jam, but I love the Jam. I love the Jam. Take them off the radio, bought some of their records. Although I did swap my copy 7-inch of Eton rifles for a pair of snakeskin stilettos with a friend of mine. Who doesn't love the Jam? Yeah, I love the Jam. Too young to have seen them really live. But I think by the time I was going to gigs, they were playing, Wembley and whatnot. Love Style Council as well.
Right.
So I've always been a fan.
And at which point did your career in PR start? Because it was Food Records. Was that your first gig? Would that be right?
I worked at Food Records, but I didn't do PR there. I was there was only like 3 or 4 people there, and I was like the A&R assistant, funnily enough, to a guy called Andy Ross, who signed Blur. So I was there for a while, but I always wanted to do PR, and I ended up going to work for a independent PR company in about 93 it was. So we did a lot of the sort of BritPop bands. Back then, its company was called Savage and Best. We did all those we did Pulp, Suede, Elastica, Menswear, Verve, a lot of those little sort of big sort of 90s bands. Yeah.
Didn't you win a Music Week award as well in the 90s?
I came second for Menswear, at which I should have won. So there, yeah. That's what I said. I came second. Should have won. I always maintain that.
What was the music? What would it have been for? What was it?
PR campaign of the year.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, Menswear. Menswear had such fun doing Menswear. In fact, I just did their 25th anniversary reissues, weirdly, 35 years later.
Bloody hell, that's ridiculous. I liked Menswear. They were good.
Well, it was great fun. Yeah, they were great.
Fabulous.
And then I left there. I went to V2 in 2000, yeah.
And so when you finished at V2 and Paul moved on to Island Records at that point, you stayed with him, but was that your own operation then?
V2, they scaled down, and so I got let go, but they let me take the acts I was working on with me, Paul being one. So, and then a year later, V2 went tits up. So that was quite a lucky escape, really.
Who else did you have? Because Stereophonics were on V2 at the time as well.
They were on V2, but I didn't work for them. I did a real kind of mishmash of stuff, because at a label, you don't choose what you get to do. I mean, I did things like Kirsty MacColl, I did Carla Bruni, God, I can't think. Ricky Lee Jones. I did a lot of kind of quite good, heritagey type acts, but Liberty X, what else did I do? I can't remember. Granddaddy I did, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So it was a real kind of eclectic kind of mix of acts.
And how does it work? So for those of us that don't work in a world of PR, how would you describe your day and your work for Paul? What do you do for him?
I hopefully get him in the print media, what's left of it, magazine, Mojo front cover, newspaper interviews, get the album reviewed everywhere, get the news stories out, that kind of thing, really. I mean, obviously with someone like Paul, he's quite in demand, so it's not like I'm sort of begging at people's doors to write about him, but I've got to be sort of quite selective what I do. But we've got got some good press coming up, actually. Yeah.
Funny enough, I've just been talking to Danny Eccleston from Mojo.
Oh yeah, about the.
So I know about the Mojo.
I can say Paul edits Mojo. Yeah, that's going to be great. That's brilliant.
He's shared a couple of bits with me. It's incredible. Yeah.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
He's had really quite a big bit of input into it, actually, as well. Yeah. Quite hands-on job, yeah.
And for a PR point of view, presumably you're also there to deal with a crisis. And I'm trying to think if there's been any with Paul, and I can't think of any at all.
Sometimes I've had to deal with the tabloids and sort of send them packing if they wanted, like I think when he had the twins, they kind of wanted to know more and things like that, and bid them away, but don't really have much trouble with that side of things, actually.
And when you're organising, so Paul's, like yesterday you had an interview day, you'll have stuff lined up for Fat Pop, the new album, which we'll talk about in a sec. Are there questions which are there things where you have to go, please don't ask him about whether he's going to get the jam back together?
The interviews he does do, he won't get someone that's going to ask him something as, banal as that. There's one thing when we do photo shoots, the one thing, no holding a guitar in a photo shoot. Often they say, oh, can he hold a guitar? Nope. That's the one thing we always veto immediately.
Are there times when he's come off at a back of a question, like an interview, and there's been he's gone, oh God, that was terrible, or that was amazing.
It's usually the finish interview where it's you read it back and you think, oh God, that's not very good, or the way it's been presented, or sometimes the journalist can give it a sort of a slant that's not really what you wanted. Mostly okay.
Now, over your shoulder, I think, top right there is As Is Now. Is that right?
Oh yeah, As Is Now.
2005, V2 Records. What does it say on the little pack?
Presented to Polly Birkbeck to recognise sales in the United Kingdom in excess of 100,000 copies of the V2 album As Is Now. Yeah, they were quite good, V2, at giving us gold discs. That's probably why they went bust. They spent so much money on giving everyone
so much money on actual gold.
The cleaner a gold disc.
And it must be difficult because I'm talking about the boss in a glowing way like this, but the hit rate of the amounts of albums that's come. You've been busy over the past 20 years, haven't you?
It's amazing. He's so prolific, it's great. And it astounds me every time he puts out another great album. I mean, BritPop is going down really well. Lots of people are saying it's one of their favourites of his solo albums. So
yeah, and I was thinking about this because I was looking through the press ads for some of his most recent albums, right? So you have these kind of one pages in Mojo, for instance, and it's like 4 or 5 stars. And like every album that I can think of, I was going back and they're all like 4 or 5 stars. This is nuts.
And I always think, oh my God, when's this amazing run going to end? But, hopefully it won't.
Yeah. So when do you get looped in? If we talk about maybe from True Meanings onwards, because it's been a really quick time. I think, what was that, like 2018, 2019, like the last 3 albums in 3-4 years. At which point do you get looped in of Paul's doing this new thing? Is that from Claire, his manager? How do you find out about it?
Well, usually straight after the release of one album, it's like, I'm working on some new tracks for the next album. And I get to hear some quite far up front if I go down to the studio. So it depends really. So I have heard, sometimes 7-8 months up front, maybe I might hear a track. Yeah.
Wow.
Because I go to the studio, quite often. So sometimes we're lucky we get to hear a new track, which is going to be on the next album.
And On Sunset was phenomenal, obviously a number 1 album. So well done from a PR point of view. Well done. Congratulations.
Yes.
Bonuses all around. When he said, there's another album, like in lockdown, I've recorded another album, we need to go again. You must be like, what, really? Do
you know what? It didn't really surprise me because what you're going to do, you can't go anywhere. So he had his studio, and of course, and he's always, mind is ticking over and writing songs, and it doesn't really surprise me that, because he had the time to do it more, really, didn't he?
I guess there's a challenge as well every time of trying to think of new ways to approach PR, right? In terms of
definitely, yes.
So how does that, is that like a collaboration between the two of you, or are you having to take ideas to and pitch? How does that work?
I take ideas and pitch. I mean, he generally doesn't do loads of interviews. He'll probably do about 2. And to be honest with you, I mean, obviously the dwindling print media, that's not much left anymore. I mean, I used to have, as Mojo, Uncut and Q as was, they would all be sort of like, can we be the one that does him? Can we be the one that does him? So I'd sometimes have to sort of, they'd have to fight it out between themselves in a way. And, so we generally do a monthly. And then Paul's, he's not a great fan of interviews like most artists, but we usually like to try and do a newspaper. And, I get requests a lot, and we sort of see what they come up with. And then I say, well, why don't you do this and that? And then we pick one that we think, he'll be most amenable to, and he'll write a good piece, and which journalists they select, and things like that. Because there's, certain journalists that we like and who are big fans of Paul. So it's a lot of organising. There
must be an element as well where, I guess when you talk about like selecting the interviewers, there are people that he's become closer to who can...
There are, yeah.
But at the same time, they're not going to write a piece where it's just like, here's my mate Paul kind of thing, yeah?
There is a sort of a little coterie of, people that often write about him and are big fans, and who he's generally got to really like now as well. But you don't want to use the same people all the time because it gets a bit predictable, really. So we sometimes, find, quite sort of random people that you wouldn't expect. I think one year Polly Vernon did an interview for the Times magazine, and it was quite a cheeky interview. She asked him quite a lot of quite personal questions, but it was a really good feature, I thought. And she just about got away with it.
I was talking to Pete Pathides about one of the articles he did. On the last night of the tour, 22 Dreams. I don't know if you remember this story. So he'd gone on 22 Dreams the last night, back on the tour bus. They're all absolutely hammered. And Paul takes him to a kebab shop and then ends up leaving all his kit in the back of a taxi.
Oh, yeah, that was ages ago. Oh, poor Pete.
So there's these little gems at time when you read these articles and just you feel like, I don't know, you're getting to know something about Paul as well, which is the art as well, because it's not just about, tell me how you wrote this song.
You've got to talk a bit about the creative process and then other stuff as well. But, depends who the journalist is and how much he gets on with them and what they can get out of him, really.
Well, I don't know if you know from the podcast, but obviously my life was a former broadcaster. I was a former radio presenter who gave up my career 10 years ago. One of the things I never got to do was interview Paul, obviously. He does do radio interviews with people.
Yes, he does.
And there are times when you do feel sometimes that he's loving every second of it. Other times where you think, well, he wants to get off the phone.
Well, yeah, there's people he likes talking to and others that he doesn't really know very well. But, you have to do a certain amount of promo, really. Having to get up really early in the morning and talk to the radio is always not number one on the list of favourites.
Yeah, you're right, because the big audiences are at breakfast time, aren't they? So you have to, it's the crack of dawn, Dave Berry, Zoe Ball and all that, yeah.
I remember when V2, the radio pluggers, used to have to go in at like 6 a.m. to be there ready to do something for whoever was on the breakfast show and stuff. And I just think, thank God I'm not a plugger.
And do you get involved in plugging the tours as well? So is it everything for Paul, the music and the...
Obviously I write all the press releases about everything and I send all the tour dates out. And hopefully I organise for people to review it. And I sort, any reviews and the guest list for that side of things, yes. So we try and get quite a lot of as many reviews as possible from newspapers or websites even and stuff like that.
When you do those ads and they're like the reviews and it's like 4 stars, 5 stars, the number one album on Sunset, that helps drive attention, drive more sales, is it? Or
they always, that's something, labels have always done. They always ask me, can you put a list of... That's something I would do, a list of the quotes, and then they use them on the advert. That's something that's been done for the last 10, 20 years more than it has been before. So
I can't remember the last time you would have had to have done a bit of control management in terms of a Duff review.
No, maybe a 3 out of 5 one. I think the Financial Times gave on Sunset a kind of a 3 out of 5, and that was about it.
What are the Financial Times reviewing?
No, they do. Yeah, they do album reviews. Yeah.
How bizarre!
I think once Metro were a bit sniffy. Otherwise, stars everywhere.
And there's obviously a part of your job is also keeping stuff to yourself. As a PR, you cannot be a blabbermouth. So you can't be telling me, for instance, is stuff that Paul's going to be doing in 2 years' time and all that kind of thing, can you?
No. No.
You can't get drunk and spill the beans is the key thing, isn't it? You can't,
no.
You have to. He has to trust you, I guess, is the point I'm making, right?
You can't sort of tell everyone about his private life or anything like that, not at all.
So can you tell us anything about Fat Pop Volume 2? Because he must be. We've had a lockdown 3, so has he been making again?
Probably, actually. I'm trying to. Yeah, he has been in the studio, his studio, but I haven't heard anything yet. I mean, he's bound to have done. But Fat Pop, it's got who the guests on it. It's got Andy Fairweather Low on a track. Obviously, the single that came out today, Shades of Blue, has Leah, his daughter, has co-written it and sings on it with him. And Zoe Ball played that this morning. The singer, I can't remember her name, from the Mysterines, who Paul really likes, is on.
Is it Leah?
Leah, that's right. Yeah. That's right. Called True. I really like that track, actually. It's great. That sounds really good. Hopefully they'll do that together live.
Initially, Paul's idea was that these were going to be singles.
Oh, yeah, there was talk of that, yeah. They all sound like singles. Somebody said that. I think Stan said that they all sounded like singles, actually.
Was the plan to release them as singles? So rather than initially...
I don't know. That's something the label would have discussed.
Oh, wow. In the New Mojo, he talks about the fact that now the single doesn't really exist as a thing now, really, although you've talked of Shades of Blue, I think, is a single. And
I was talking yesterday about something, and I said, single, whatever you call it now, track,
Yeah, Paul talks about impact tracks, I think.
Oh my God, impact dates, instant grats and all this kind of jargon that's used now. It's hideous. Hideous. Sorry, everyone. Hate it. Instant grat. Oh.
But it's such a different industry to when you first started out, isn't it?
I am quite bamboozled by all the streaming stuff still. I just sort of think, I don't really understand about digital service platforms or whatever it is they're called. I just sort of, that's just left to them. And sometimes I just think, I don't understand.
Yeah, it's almost like, here's a new song from Paul, and you can get, wherever you get your music, it'll be there. Just go and have a look.
Is it a teaser? Is it an instant grat? Instant grat is basically another word for teaser.
Okay, an instant grat. Oh, okay.
Instant gratification, I suppose it stands for, possibly, maybe.
It's interesting, though, when you look at how the album has to be almost drip-fed now, which is very different of Declan O'Rourke's new album's out today, which Paul has produced. And,
Yeah.
and I'm a big fan of Declan. I think he's great. But I've already heard 6 of the tracks because there's been like this drip feed of the songs. So it feels very different when you actually get your hands on an album now. It feels very different.
Yes, I know. Because they put out, probably about 4 tracks, don't they, around the release of an album now. I think at the Barbican on May the 16th.
Is there anything you can tell us about that gig?
Some special guests, but I can't tell you who.
What if I name people and then I can just watch your eyes and nobody else who's listening needs to know, but I can just tell myself?
I'm not going to tell you.
Paul Weller, Steve Craddock, and James Buckley. Is that right? Is it James Buckley?
No,
James Buckley is the guy from In Between Us.
Is it Jules Buckley?
Jules Buckley, sorry. Yeah. And a full orchestra.
Yeah, a full orchestra.
Wow. I'm excited about this.
Yeah. I think there's 2 special guests. I know one of them is really quite exciting, I think, anyway.
Male or female, you're allowed?
No, not going to say.
Nothing. Oh, you're so good, Polly, honestly. You're very good. But I'm excited about that because I think I saw Paul on the Forest tour a couple of years back, but the gig before that was the one at the Raw Festival Hall where he worked with the orchestra with Hannah Peel. And that was oh my God, just brilliant,
fantastic.
Wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
that went down so well. It was really special. It was brilliant.
Do you get to go to some of the gigs as well? Do you get to experience Paul live?
I get to go to, I always go to at least, I usually go about 2 a tour. No, I can go, I go to loads. In fact, when he played it, was it the O2? I remember thinking, I've got to go to the O2. But I thought it was an absolutely brilliant gig, that O2 gig, the last one.
Yeah, I didn't go to that because I'm a bit like your reaction. That's my reaction. It's like, the bloody O2. It's always a nightmare to get home from. Yes,
I always have to leave. For me, I always have to leave towards the end because I don't live in London. But I tend to sometimes I go to Portsmouth or Brighton. I went to a Brighton show. It's easier for me. I live in Surrey. When he played in Guildford, that was like, hallelujah, because I couldn't drive there.
Where do you gravitate to then? Are you a mosh pit kind of girl or is it?
Oh, for that now. I like us to sit down. A seat for me, please.
I want a seat in somewhere where I can easily get out to go for a wee because I'll need to go about 5 times during this gig.
Yeah. No, I like to sit down.
When you have a press day, how much of it is bang, 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 you're going through the interviews? How much time do you get to spend with Paul and just having a bit of a chat?
He might do a lot of international things in one day, which is organised by someone else, which tends to be like phone, or he might do a bit of online stuff, which will be sort of, but with the print press, they're usually quite big interviews and they involve a photo. So we just do like one in an afternoon. We won't do loads at once.
And they often come down to Black Barn and things like that as well, do they?
Yeah, they do. People are always really happy to go to Black Barn, which is good. It's a really nice place, but yeah, sometimes we do. There's a cafe in West London near where he lives that he's done quite a few interviews in. I remember once, my little anecdote, we were doing an interview for, I think it was Sunday Times. I think it was for something to do with the Jam, actually. So we were sitting in this interview and Kiki D walked in and he sort of, Stu Senna, and he started chatting away to her, talking about her music, and they were having a really good conversation. And then she sort of left and came down and said, "Oh, do you know Kiki D then?" And he went, "Oh no, I've never met her before in my life."
Just that musician's code.
No, he was like...
I'm really excited about Fat Pop, as are so many of Paul's fans.
The artwork's wonderful. I love the artwork.
I'm chatting to, it's Andy, the guy who's done the artwork.
He's a new person.
Yeah.
I'm not sure of his name.
He's coming on the podcast in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, and I really like it. I remember there was some sort of artwork like that in Black Barn. I think he'd sent them, and I remember thinking, that's really nice. And it's great.
One of the things they have to think about now when you're promoting a record is the world of social media.
Yeah, Paul just tends to eschew social media, as everybody knows.
One of the things they have to think about now is obviously how everything looks in social. So creating these little animations of Fat Pop and the shades of blue and all that stuff is really cool.
I think it's looking good. And I really liked the video that Douglas Hart did for Cosmic Fringes. Did a little sort of, that was great, I thought. A clip. Do they call them a clip or a film? Do they call them a video anymore? Who knows?
Well, I prefer those to the lyric videos, I have to say, because you don't often get a proper video these days, do you? Can you tell us, is there anything more to come before Fat Pop is released itself?
The Fat Pop comes out on the 14th of May. The sort of shades of blue. The issue of Mojo is out that Paul edits is out on about the 20th of April. So that's out then. What is he doing? He did Zoe Ball this morning. I'm just not sure what any other telly or radio there is.
One of the big things from Paul Weller, I think, is his love of music. So it's not just about making music, but he's a proper like collector and listener and absorber, yeah?
His enthusiasm for new stuff, I think it's amazing. I mean, I get a bit jaded about, I'm a bit long and I've heard it before, but he is so enthusiastic. It's fantastic. And he's always saying, have you heard this? Have you heard that? Have you heard this? And I just, I don't know how he manages to keep so enthusiastic about it, but he really is. And he actively seeks out things, and he's ready to hear different things. And, people whose taste he likes recommends him, he'll stand things out. I mean, I played him something yesterday, like a remix of something, and he was like, I really like that, see if that guy wants to remix something, that sort of thing. So,
Nice. Yeah, but there's so many recommendations I've had from, Declan O'Rourke we mentioned earlier was one of them, actually, back in the early days of Galileo.
Oh, he's been a real flag wave for Declan for ages, because Declan was on V2, actually, and I think that's how Paul discovered him, and he's always been really, really vocal about him and really sort of waved the flag for Declan. Yeah,
but so many artists like Erland and the Carnival, and I know he's worked with Erland Cooper and stuff recently, Black Pumas, all these bands, you just kind of go, oh my God. And I've seen the new issue of Mojo magazine, there's like loads more recommendations, and yet immediately you write a list and you go and seek them out. It's brilliant.
I can't remember what he chose for the new band. Oh, there was a list, and I don't know which one made the grade in the end. Was it the Mysterines?
Yeah,
it might have even been Declan. Yeah. It might have even been Declan.
It's remarkable, because I don't know. We were saying on one of the earlier episodes, I don't know how he gets time, because I've got 2 young kids. He's got 3 young kids. Like, all he's doing surely is just watching Paw Patrol, like I am. How is he getting any time to himself whatsoever? I don't understand it. I've got no control over the music system in this house whatsoever, or the telly. It's remarkable. Well, this has been so lovely, Polly. I have to say, thank you so much for giving us a bit of insight into your world and how it all works. I love hearing about this kind of stuff as well, because the minutiae of the inner workings of the Weller circle is a fascinating thing.
The team.
Yeah, but no, it's lovely. And I hear this about Black Barn so much, of the Black Barn team and stuff. So I have 2 final questions for you, Polly, before you go.
Go on.
All right, you're allowed 1 Paul Weller song for the rest of your life. It can be the Jam, the Style Council, or solo. Which one's it going to be?
It will have to be Down in the Tube Station at Midnight.
Oh,
that's my favourite. I love it. It's my favourite Jam song, one of my favourite songs.
Have you ever asked Paul to play it acoustically for you when you're together?
No.
Final question before you go. The aim of this podcast is to secure that interview with Paul, the one that I never managed in my entire radio career. If it happens, and Polly, you've got to help me make this happen. If it happens, what should I talk to him about? Or better, what should I avoid? What should I not talk to? How would I cock it up?
Obviously, don't talk about the Jam. He likes talking about fashion, and he's really likes talking about new music as well. He loves talking about new bands, from what I can see and hear. Okay. So but stay away from the Jam.
He'll bring up the Jam if he wants to, but otherwise do
a little bit, but not constant, and never ask if the Jam are going to reform. Because they're not.
Do you feel? No, leave it. We're done with it. Because it is that legacy. And I do feel that in recent years, he seems to look at that and realise it's a legacy and realise it means so much to people. And he's happy for that without having to bang on about it, right?
Yeah, and he still does the songs, and I'm really pleased that he does a lot more Style Council songs now, because I think they sound amazing now. I think there's more Style Council. I think he should reform the Style Council for like a one-off gig with like Mick and Steve and Dee. I don't know if Dee would do it. I think it'd be amazing to see the Style Council.
Yeah. The Long Hot Summers, the little bit at the end of Long Hot Summers was fabulous, wasn't it? Wasn't that so lovely? We brought a tear to my eye. That I have to say.
Documentary. Oh, I loved it.
Yeah.
And Mick and Paul are still mates, and Mick's on Fat Pop as well, isn't he?
Hey, Polly, this has been so lovely. Thank you so much. When are you next down at Black Barn? Do you know yet?
I think next month. I think he's doing something, next.
I should. Okay, interesting. All right, well, give him my best, won't you? And
you never know. Fingers crossed.
Yeah,
he'll be in the little corner of the screen.
Oh no, I've got to be at Black Barn. I don't want none of this Zoom nonsense. We'll be out of lockdown by then. That'd be lovely.
Paul has done some Zooms, believe it or not.
Yeah, he can make me a cup of tea. I understand he's bloody good at making cups of tea.
He's a top tea maker. He's always making tea.
Ollie, thank you so much. I'll let you get on with the rest of your Friday night.
Dan,
thank you so much.
Bye.
My thanks once again to Polly Birkbeck. What an absolute star. And obviously, I hope we get to meet again in the very near future. Plus, since we recorded that interview, details have now been revealed about that Barbican gig. We know Boy George will be joining, James Morrison, who I love, and Celeste. Wow, what a lineup. All with Paul, Steve Craddock, and Jules Buckley. You can find ticket details, obviously, on Paul's official channels. Now, next up, Mix Up, the legend that is Mick Talbot from the Style Council, who joins me for a very special episode. Clear your diary as it lands Tuesday, 11th of May, an hour and 20 minutes chatting with one of the nicest men in music. I'm sure you're going to love this one and all of the little surprises that we have within. Don't forget, share this episode on social media. Please do leave a review wherever you get your podcasts. It really does help us to find new listeners to the show. In fact, text a Weller-loving mate right now and tell them all about it. You can find us on Twitter at WellerFanPod, or on Facebook and Instagram, it's Paul Weller Fan Podcast. I'll see you next time.